Hey guys, my name is Matt McGivney, and this is my project on the topic of emerging viruses. So, the evolution of viruses. It's actually unknown where viruses originated, but the favorable hypothesis right now is that viruses originated from naked bits of cellular nucleic acid, which moved from one cell to another, probably through injured cell surfaces. And the most likely, the original sources of viral genomes include plasmids and transposons. Plasmids are basically a small circular DNA molecule that's found in bacteria, and transposons are DNA segments that can move from one location to another within a cell's genome. So, what is an emerging virus? An emerging virus is a virus that appears suddenly or newly onto the medical science field. Viruses can cause severe problems with one's health, and some examples of emerging viruses would be the avian influenza virus, aka bird flu, AIDS, HIV, the West Nile virus, and of course everybody's favorite, Ebola. So there are three processes which contribute to the emergence of viral diseases: mutation, the spreading of viruses from isolation, and the spreading of existing viruses from animals. Um, Mutation. So viruses have a very fast mutation rate, and this, along with their characteristic of a short generation time, allow natural selection to quickly select stronger diseases better fit to survive. RNA viruses have an even more unusually high rate of um, mutation due to error in the replication of RNA. Um, in the RNA replication process, there is no proofreading and correcting of errors as there is when replicating DNA, so more errors are likely to slip into the system. And a change in the virus's genetic coding can allow an ancestor to produce different strains. Um, this is how epidemics break out, because if a host may be immune to the original virus, but it is unlikely to be immune to each of the different strands. So the host is more susceptible to becoming the host is more susceptible to becoming infected by the virus. Um, Dissemination, or the spreading of diseases, is another major contribution to emerging viruses. Uh, Essentially, what we're looking at here is the spread of viruses from an isolated population to the general public. If a disease was present in a small isolated population but not in the general public, then the general public the general public's immune response is unlikely to be ready to handle the exposure to this new virus, and as a result, they're more likely to become infected. And an example of this would be Ebola, which actually existed in Africa for a couple of decades before it spread throughout the world. And the third bullet point, which is the spread of existing viruses from animals, essentially what this is getting at is that animals can carry viruses and be unaffected by them. And while they're carrying them, they have the opportunity to transfer these diseases to other beings, such as humans. So basically, you can have a rat that's carrying a disease, and the rat might be unaffected by this certain disease, but that disease could affect a human. So if the rat is able to transfer that disease to the human somehow, then the human may become infected. And danger of not taking antibiotics for the right length of time, this is just a bit of a side note, is that the virus will not actually be fully killed off. Instead, what the antibiotic will have done is just killed off the weakest parts of the virus. This can be dangerous because if it only killed off the weakest parts of the virus, then only the strong aspects of the virus are left to reproduce, so the virus comes back even stronger than it was before. And then one example of the spread of existing viruses from animals would be the avian flu. Basically, there are three types of influenzas: types B and C, which only affect humans, and type A, which affects a lot of other different animals, including birds. And basically, the A strain had caused three major flu epidemics among humans in the last 100 years. Um, the worst of this being the Spanish flu. And so yeah, that is not a good thing. A little recap on the immune system, just so that we'll be able to make a connection with the emerging viruses today. So the immune system has two main parts, innate and the acquired. The innate contains the first and second lines of defense. The external defense, which is the first line, is your skin and mucous membranes, saliva, and then the internal barrier, which is the second line of defense, warns other cells and attracts attention to infected sites. An important part of the second line of defense is histamines, which are signaling molecules, and they trigger the inflammatory response and activate pain receptors. They also cause vasodilation, which brings more blood to the hurt place, and in blood are phagocytes. Phagocytes use pseudopods to grab invaders and break them down. There are four main types: neutrophils, macrophages, eosinophils, and dendritic cells. So basically, after that, if none of that works, it moves on to the acquired or third line of the immune system. And in the third line, T cells and B cells, T cells and B cells work together to rid the body or rid the host of the virus. So connections to cell communication. I included this graphic here just because I thought it was a little bit of a funny adaptation of how the fight against viruses could be portrayed. And I always memorize things when it's a little bit more out there, so I thought that this could help people to memorize the immune system's fight against viruses. And that's basically how we're going to connect emerging viruses to cell communication. So in the immune system, there are problems in the third line of defense. And well, I suppose I should start with the problems in the second line of defense. So in the innate defense, a lot of pathogens have actually evolved to slip by this innate defense, so they can jump species to species barriers. So basically that causes pathogens to access the inner part of the immune system, where the acquired defense would have to take place more quickly and more readily. The acquired system also has a few problems of itself, but it also has an ability to counter these problems. So the problems are that the third line is activated by dendritic cells, and basically T cells, which mature in the thymus, and B cells, which mature in the bone marrow, have to have a pathogen present before maturation can occur. And since pathogens, particularly RNA viruses, mutate so quickly, by the time B cells and T cells are actually released and ready to fight the pathogen may have already changed. And then to counter this, B and T cells actually already have they have a memory of over 100,000 antigens that you're born with, and this allows them to identify different antigens the second that you're born and the instant that they enter the system, so that they're able to fight them. And then they're also able to memorize new antigens as you are exposed to different viruses. So here's my works cited page. I apologize for going over time a little bit, but I hope you enjoyed my video and I hope you learned something. Thank you.